Welcome back, my friends, to the Dime Store Cinema, where we talk movies and culture. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about some cultural issues. I mentioned in my last podcast about the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial. I kind of wanted to go over where the trial stands. It's about to resume tomorrow, so kind of give you an idea of where it is right now. I mentioned in my previous video, I'm not typically one who's into celebrity drama or gossip or anything like that. However, this trial is very interesting, and it's created a huge cultural wave. It's just bombarded the internet with memes and funny stories and all kinds of things like that. So I think that this is something very relevant to talk about. And it also it hits on several things that I find very interesting. One is trials, particularly jury trials, and how our legal system works, along with storytelling, because what we'll see is the storytelling methods that both Johnny Depp use and Amber Heard use, very different in the way that they do it, and also telling very different stories. Which is what we're going to have to kind of focus on, determining which one is dealing with facts and which ones are not dealing with facts. From the outset, I will have to say, as of now, I do tend to believe Johnny Depp more. However, that is because only his side has presented evidence, or substantial evidence, thus far. We're still only on the second witness that Amber Heard's team has called, Amber Heard being that second witness. So we'll kind of get into that. The main thing I want to kind of focus on right now is give the most effective witnesses that have been called so far, for which side, and then also why I tend to lean one way or the other. I'm trying to remain objective on this, but there are some aspects that have been kind of making me do some mental gymnastics to do that. There is some stuff that hasn't been entered into evidence in the trial that a lot of people have been posting online. I have watched those things, but I'm trying not to let that impact my stance on this. Just because the jury isn't going to see that, or if they do, they haven't seen it yet. So, and that can be for a lot of different reasons. It can be because one side was able to argue to the judge a reason why it can't be submitted. It could also be because it is involving people who cannot testify for what they said in those either audio or video evidences. Virginia, as I understand, is an interesting state in that they can't compel people to testify. So because of that, we've seen a lot of videos of people's depositions, which is, and I'm no expert, and I've watched maybe 6 or 7 trials from beginning to end so far. This, I believe, will be my 6th or maybe 7th. So this is the first time I've really seen that, and it's because Virginia itself has its own interesting rules. So let's jump into the trial. So I want to start with Johnny Depp. His team went first, so he is the plaintiff in this. So that means that he is bringing accusations of defamation against Amber Heard. Now, defamation, particularly when dealing with a celebrity, is very difficult to prove, because when you're dealing with a celebrity, it opens you up to speculative articles being said, because we, in theory, try to protect the First Amendment, free speech so much. Public figures typically aren't as protected when it comes to lies that are told about them, and in fact, lies themselves are not defamation. You can lie about someone if you want to. Now, where defamation comes in is when there are when the person being lied about can point to actual damages. So in the idea of actual malice speaks towards being someone knowingly lying. So the knowing creation of a lie that then results in damages. So the plaintiff not only has to prove that the person lied, but also that they knew that they lied, and then also that there were damages associated with that lie. I'm pretty sure I got that pretty close to right. So that's what we're looking at. And what's been interesting about this case so far is that they really haven't focused too much on the actual defamation aspect of this, which has tended to make most people believe that this is just an attempt for Johnny Depp to get his story out. I would tend to agree with that. I think that seems to be more of the idea. Now, on top of that, I don't think that Amber Heard and her attorneys are doing a very good job of steering it back to the defamation case. Because since defamation is so hard to prove when you're a public figure, that would be their winning argument, is to focus on the defamation. But they've instead turned it into who is the abuser. So those of you who don't know, the case is concerning an article that Amber Heard wrote that suggested, without putting Johnny Depp's name in it, however, due to the timeline and the information provided in the article, it was very heavily suggested, and everyone knew that it was about Johnny Depp. In this article, it said that he was a physical, emotional, and sexual abuser to Amber Heard. Due to this article, the Johnny Depp's legal team is suggesting that he has lost many, if not all, of his movie roles since then, because this article came out at the height of the Me Too movement. So because of that, everyone was jumping on the bandwagon of getting rid of these abusers, which theoretically is a good thing if you can prove that they're actually abusers. So that's what this case has become about. It's become about the abuse. It's not really about the defamation, even though that's what it technically is. On top of that, Amber Heard is also filing a suit against him at the same time. So she's trying to sue him for $100 million, whereas he's trying to sue her for $50 million, and citing damages. So I think that it's going to be much more difficult for her to prove, or for her to win her case, than it will be for Johnny Depp to win his case. However, the vast majority of lawyers that I watch seem to think that it's going to be kind of a draw. That is, that both parties are going to be ruled against. However, like I said, I think that Johnny Depp will be fine with that, because he's gotten the opportunity to tell his side of the story, and he seems to, as of this moment, to have the vast majority of the public on his side. Now, I want to kind of talk about why that may be. Now, part of the reason why is because only Johnny Depp's team so far has been able to present their case. So the way it works is you have the plaintiff's series of witnesses. They do their initial questioning, then there's cross, and then they are subject to recall if they need to. And then once all of their witnesses are called, then the defendant's team, Amber Heard, will call her witnesses. They'll follow the same process, except that Depp's team will then have an opportunity to call back some of their witnesses, or call new witnesses to offer rebuttal towards what they have testified to, what Amber Heard's witnesses have testified to. And then after that, they'll go into their closing arguments. The closing arguments are where you're supposed to tie everything in your case together to make a very succinct point, and basically let the jury know how they should be thinking about this. This is also around the time that they're given the scope of the scope of the charges, essentially. So it'll be clarified to them what they're supposed to be ruling on. So in this case, defamation. However, if the public opinion is on Johnny's side for him being the abused, that might be enough for him to win, even if technically it doesn't meet the standard of defamation. And that's one of the benefits that Johnny's side is seeing in being able to get a jury trial as opposed to a bench trial, because it's almost impossible for a public figure to win a bench trial when it comes to defamation. With a jury trial, it's much easier, because it's easier to convince novices in the law that someone knowingly lied about you and that there were damages associated with that. So that already has put Johnny in a favorable step, the fact that he was able to get a jury trial. So I want to talk about 4 witnesses on Johnny's side that I think are what really started forming and shaping the cultural opinion to his side. Now, one is his testimony himself. When he was up there, he was a very articulate and calm and humorous and likable figure. This made him look really good in the public eye. His ability to joke, his ability to answer questions. I will say that he hurt himself a little bit with how delayed and labored his speaking was. I think that probably bored some of the jurors. I think that might have turned them off a little bit. However, there is him being a likable person aspect that I think is, for the most part, overweighed a good portion of that. But that was something that kind of kept him from being the star witness in my mind. The second person is Dr. Curry, which was the forensic psychologist, expert witness that they called, who diagnosed, or not really diagnosed, but gave a series of tests that seemed to suggest that Amber Heard suffers from histrionic personality disorder, as well as a borderline personality disorder. She was very good at answering questions. She was very professional. She was very calm. She seemed very certain of herself. She had an answer for everything. And I think she also had a very good rapport with the jury. Once again, I'm not there, so I can't confirm that. But based on watching it, I know if I was a juror, she would have very good rapport with me. And that's the thing you got to keep in mind with the jury. They're normal people. They're just randomly selected people, not entirely randomly, because the legal teams will kind of pick and choose who they want. But in a certain sense, they're randomized people. So typically, if you're feeling a pretty good connection with the person giving a testimony, then you can kind of get an idea of where the jury might be. You always have to keep in mind the bias, though. As I mentioned, I believe at the beginning that I was already biased towards Johnny Depp based on things outside of the trial that I had already seen. Once again, trying to keep my opinion out of that, focusing on the trial. So I thought that her testimony was very good, and based on all of the evidence that had been presented prior to that, it all seemed to lend itself to her diagnosis, or at least the results of the tests that she administered. So that was very damning to Amber Heard's side, because they were able to seamlessly create a narrative that was very put together, and that's very important when you're dealing with a jury trial, because people understand things through stories. The whole idea of parables, you tie together a bunch of different occurrences that then weave into something that is all tied together, and then you're able to learn a lesson from it. And they were able to do that very well with all of the previous testimony leading to Dr. Curry. There's also the attractiveness factor. She has been dubbed, mommy doctor, I believe, in some circles of the internet. She is a very attractive lady, and that can sometimes help as well. Whether it should or not is neither here nor there, but it is what it is. People tend to have an easier time believing attractive people than unattractive people. Once again, that's not ethical or moral, but it is a fact that we have to live with. The next set of witnesses that I think were very, very effective towards Johnny Depp's team were the two police officers that were called. So during the time that Amber is accusing him of being abusive, there were two police calls made on the same night, and the first responding police officer showed up. They did a sweep of the house. They talked to both Amber Heard and her friends, and they reported that there was no sign of any domestic violence. There was no sign of domestic abuse. They indicated there was no sign of Amber being injured, and in fact, they said that the only redness that they saw on Amber Heard's face appeared to be from crying. So there was some crying, there were some tears, and according to their notes, according to what they said, the only redness they saw was from the crying. They also indicated that they didn't fill out a police report because they only do that when there is a sign of a domestic abuse. So according to their own investigation, brief as it was, they determined there was no domestic abuse. So they didn't file the paperwork. All they did, they gave her their business card and advised to call them directly if anything else were to happen. So this was, I think, very damaging. And then following up, the second set of police officers showed up a little bit later. They didn't do a sweep of the house, but they did question them. They also confirmed that there was no redness other than redness on Amber Heard's face that would be consistent with crying. Also indicated that there was no sign of any kind of domestic abuse. So two different sets of police officers, both confirming the same story, both essentially showing that Amber Heard was not abused at this time, that she has indicated that she was abused. So that, I think, was very damning to Amber Heard's case, just because you have two sets of people who are only tangentially related in the fact that they work with the same police department. They didn't really communicate with one another, a little bit with the other team, indicating that they had already been there and they had already done the sweep, which is why they didn't do it themselves. But both coming up with the same story, both corroborating one another. So, and the fact that these are police officers, the fact that the body cams that they had on weren't on all the time, so there was a lot of things that we weren't able to see, a lot of things that weren't brought into trial, but there were plenty of things that we were able to see. It all seems to substantiate that there was nothing amiss in the apartment. There was no need for them to file any kind of police report. It appeared to just be someone who was upset. So I thought that testimony was very damning to Amber Heard's side. The next was Johnny Depp's longtime friend Isaac, the artist. This wasn't so much necessarily because of his testimony or any of the things that he said. There were a few things talking about conversations they had, how Amber Heard acted, different memories about things that she was wearing, different memories about her not having any injuries, memories of injuries that Johnny Depp himself did have. But what made his testimony, I think, so damning is how likable he was. He was a star witness in the fact that he appeared to be a genuine, truthful, honest person, and also a very good friend to have. So I think he just won the hearts and souls of the jury, the fact that he was advocating for his friend, the things that he said about Amber, although he attempted very much not to say anything negative about her. He indicated that he loved her as much as Johnny did, in a different way, obviously, but he went out of his way not to say anything particularly negative towards her, but made at least all seeming honest observations of different things that she did. So I think the likability of him is really what made him such an effective witness against Amber Heard in what was indicated in her deposition. The last person that I think is one of he was one of the most, and there were some others. His Johnny Depp's new accountant, I thought, was a very good witness. He handled the cross-examination very, very well. He had some very interesting information about one of the more explosive fights that was reported to have happened, concerning why Johnny Depp was late to Amber Heard's birthday party. But the gentleman, I believe, who was one of the most damning witnesses was the deal maker. I'm blanking on his name right now, but he's a gentleman who's been very much involved in Hollywood for the past 50 years. He has been involved in deal making in some of the biggest movies that have ever been made. Some of the ones that stick out to me are he was involved in Star Wars, I believe. He was involved in Rocky. He was involved in Back to the Future, and multiple other TV shows, books, movies. A person very much with the pulse of the industry in mind, and also as part of his business. I thought that his testimony was very, very damning in that it credibly showed a plausible case for damages. Once again, going back, we're talking about defamation, right? We're not talking about whether or not who technically is the abuser, but we're talking about defamation. So he very effectively was able to tie the article that was written to Johnny Depp's lack of movie opportunities, and also to some of the monetary issues that have come from that. So, and he once again was able to handle cross-examination extremely well. He was a no-nonsense witness. He knew what he was talking about. He was effective at communicating it, and he was very good at being precise with what was being said to him. So, they brought in other articles that were written about Johnny Depp prior to Amber Heard's coming out, and he was very quick and very good at pointing out who wrote those things, just tabloid journalists that no one listens to. And he brought up the fact that who posted it, who was involved in it, is what made Hollywood take interest in that article as opposed to other articles. So I think that his testimony, I think, was one of the most effective for speaking to the actual defamation, whereas most of the other witnesses were speaking more towards the character and the untruthfulness of Amber Heard's claims thus far. So those, I think, were the core witnesses. There were a lot of other ones, and there were some interesting things from their couples counselor and other people like that. But those people, I think, are some of the most important as far as what has kind of changed or had a big impact on changing the public opinion of the case. More so than the people that have already changed, because since Johnny Depp has kind of been kicked out of everything, a lot of stuff has come up about Amber Heard that has changed a lot of people's mind about her anyway. But those things so far haven't come into trial, so I'm not gonna deal with that. But speaking directly from this trial, things that have changed people's minds, I think those testimonies were major factors in that. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but as I've been watching it, those are the ones that have really stuck out to me. So let's switch over to Amber Heard's team. So far they've only called Dr. Hughes and Amber Heard. We're anticipating for Amber Heard's testimony to probably finish tomorrow, and then there'll be the cross-examination probably starting in the second half of Monday, maybe on Tuesday. So what I'll say, Dr. Hughes, I believe, She's been a forensic psychologist for 20 some years. I believe she said 25, somewhere around there. So she has a lot of experience. She was, as far as the substance of what she said, she was very good at refuting Dr. Curry. I will admit that right away. She was very knowledgeable of her industry. She was very confident in her answers, but there is a public image problem that I think that happened with her. She seemed to be very, very biased. Now, personally, I think that this came from her history with being her history with testifying in the past. So the way that she framed everything in presenting the female victim being, or the victimization of the female being perpetrated by the male. Everything was framed that way. Now, I think that in a normal trial, when you're dealing with people who aren't celebrities and there aren't opinions of people beforehand, that can be a very good framing device. So you're already putting in the jury's mind, the female victim, male perpetrator. You're planting that seed in the jury's mind. So I understand why maybe that's not an ethical thing to do when you're giving testimony, but it can be a very effective thing. The problem is, since we've already had all of Johnny Depp's testimony, and the public opinion of him seems to be getting more and more favorable, by testifying that way, all it's doing is making people think that you're biased. All it did is make people think that she was very biased. And there might have been some bias there anyway. She's never, according to her own testimony, worked with or testified for or in any way collaborated with any situation where the female was the abuser and the male was the abused. She had mentioned that there were situations where there were homosexual couples where a male was a victim to a male, or other homosexual couples where the female was a victim of a female. But never in her 25 years has she ever worked with or testified for any situation where the female was the abuser to the male. So due to that, the people who already have a positive view of Johnny Depp, they're automatically going to discard her testimony because they see her as being very biased. So once again, coming from it, all things being equal, if these people weren't celebrities, I think that her testimony might have been more effective, because people wouldn't have a history of an opinion for either party. And when you start planting that seed of mode of thought, it can be very effective for a jury. In this case, I think it made her look very biased. That doesn't necessarily discount anything that she said. I'm not a psychologist, so I can't confirm how those tests are run. But there were some questionable things what she did. The way that she labeled things, the way she took notes, different things like that. The fact that they didn't have to interview her before hiring her, it kind of suggests that she kind of has a bias. But once again, I mean, the only reason this is really sticking in anyone's head is the fact that the opinion of Johnny Depp has risen so much due to the testimony that was given on his side. So I think that really hurt her testimony. I don't necessarily think that anything that she said was particularly wrong or a lie, but I think that there were some glaring issues, such as the only the only information that she received was self-reported from Amber Heard herself. So that's an issue as well. She didn't interview Johnny Depp. She looked at some of the case notes. I did find it interesting, the things that she chose to ignore and the things that she chose to use. That was a little interesting to me. Once again, she's being hired as an expert, specifically corroborating Amber Heard's mental stability. So I don't necessarily have anything particularly negative to say against her, other than the way that she chose to testify, the way she chose to present the information. It came off sounding very, very biased, and I don't think it ended up helping her. I don't think it helped Amber Heard as much as Dr. Curry helped Johnny Depp. It'll be very interesting to see if they call Dr. Curry back up to the stand to be a rebuttal towards Dr. Hughes. It'll be interesting to see that, what she ends up saying, how she ends up defending her positions that the much senior doctor seems to disagree with her conclusions. It'll be interesting to see how she manages that. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully we'll see that on Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm guessing, depending on how long the cross goes. I don't imagine they'd take a whole day on cross. It's typically not as good for the jury to do that. Cross is typically more effective if it's very succinct and direct. And I think they have enough to be able to do that with Amber. Second witness for Amber Heard's side is Amber Heard herself. And here's where we're getting into the big problem. I imagine many of you have seen memes about her already, the way that she's telling the story. She doesn't seem honest. She seems to be embellishing. She seems to be struggling with how to testify. She doesn't... one of the big differences between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard is Johnny Depp, as he went through his testimony, he picked up on the rules of the court, and he adjusted the things that he said accordingly. Amber Heard doesn't seem to be learning. She doesn't seem to be adjusting her method, and it's making it a little cumbersome for the audience, and then also, I'm sure, for the jury. And of course, her lawyers are struggling as well, because they're having to deal with Amber being objected to quite frequently, and the way that they phrase their questions isn't necessarily helping either. But a lot of it is Amber Heard and the way that she's choosing to say it. Now, I am trying to do some major mental gymnastics to not be biased against her, trying to focus on the things that have been entered into court. And I will say that maybe the reason why her testimony looks so fake is maybe it's rehearsed. She might have these stories, she might say them in a mirror, she might be going over them over and over again, and so when she goes on stand and she's telling them again, it's not sincere. It's something that is rehearsed and said again. So it might be true, it just might be rehearsed, and something that she's just going verbatim what she has memorized. That's what I keep on trying to tell myself. The problem with that is her stories have changed. From her original deposition to now, stories have changed. The stories keep on getting more and more convoluted. Everything is getting bigger and bigger. The physical violence that she's describing doesn't seem to match up with eyewitness testimony that Johnny Depp's side has had, on top of pictures and in public appearances within that same time frame. One of the things that really stuck out to me is the testimony about the severity of the beating that she received before appearing on James Corden's show, and the way she looked. Now, this hasn't entered into court, and it won't. They definitely won't be able to enter this, but I saw a side-by-side comparison of the pictures that she had that allegedly were from that incident and the picture of Rihanna when she was hit. And it is a stark difference. Rihanna is is puffy. She has severe contusions. She was very, very, it was very obvious that she had been hit. And the way that Amber Heard described the physical violence that she received, it was nowhere even near the level of those pictures of Rihanna. And according to that case, she was only hit, I think, 3 times. Rihanna was only hit about 3 times, whereas Amber Heard is saying that she was punched repeatedly and hit repeatedly and headbutted and all kinds of stuff. So that wasn't from 3 hits; it was from multiple, according to her testimony. The images provided don't seem to match up with the story. Then, of course, we're getting into the most extreme aspect of her testimony, where she's claiming this was the night that Johnny had his finger cut off. This is the infamous night in Australia, and the testimony that she gives really doesn't make much sense. She talks about being dragged across broken glass, walking on broken glass, her hands being shoved into broken glass. She talks about being sexually abused with a bottle, which she then later identified as a Maker Mark bottle. And of course, she's also suggesting that Johnny cut his own finger off and put his cigarette in his own face, which also doesn't seem to fit with most of the testimony that we've received so far. I have a really hard time believing this based on the way that alcoholic bottle glass breaks, how sharp it is and how easy it is to get cut by it. I've broken a few of those bottles in my day, and it depends on the kind of bottle. Some of them can be thicker chunks of glass, and they won't necessarily cut you, but they'll stab into you if you step on them. But I've been cut just picking those pieces up from a vodka bottle once, and then also from a bourbon bottle. I've been cut, and I've gotten shards of glass stuck in my hands just picking it up. I couldn't imagine being thrown on top of it or dragged across it or walking on it. Those shards of glass, they are rounded and they're very sharp, and they will definitely cut you up. And it's not the kind of cut that you can easily cover up, because when you get cut by glass, it's not like getting cut with a knife. It's not a smooth slice. It is a jagged cut, and it's hard to hide those scars. So I haven't seen any pictures of scars. I haven't seen any pictures of cuts. I haven't seen any pictures of anything that would suggest anything near that. And then, of course, the sexual assault with the Maker's Mark bottle. Everyone knows, who knows anything about whiskey, that they dip their bottles in wax. That's how they seal them. I find it unlikely that that bottle that was in the picture that she's claiming was the bottle was used for that purpose, based on its appearance, based on a lot of different factors dealing with that wax, dealing with that bottle itself. It doesn't seem to be accurate. However, that's just her side of the story so far. We're still waiting on all of the other witnesses that she'll call to corroborate her story, all the other evidence that will come in. So I'm trying, very difficult, not to just go all in for Johnny Depp. I'm trying to be very objective on this. We'll see what her side brings to light as far as testimony goes, as far as evidence goes, and we'll go from there. But that's where we are as of now. That's just kind of a quick glimpse of what's going on in the trial. There's a lot more to it. There are hundreds of channels right now going into deep dives. I am partial to, and I've been watching Legal Bites and Ricada Law and Nate the Lawyer. I've been watching their commentary on it as well as watching the trial myself. There's a lot to it. There's a lot that's been testified to. There's a lot that doesn't have evidence. There's a lot of he said, she said. My personal opinion, as of right now, just based on the fact that we're still anticipating witness testimony and evidence from Amber Heard's side, and the fact that this is based on this is a defamation case, not a criminal case concerning abuse, but instead a defamation case. I personally think that neither side will win, and that will be a win for Johnny Depp, because Johnny Depp has already won in public opinion, and that, I believe, is really all that he really wanted, is to get back to a point where people didn't see him as a monster anymore. So I think that as of now, as I said, we'll see what happens with the trial. As of now, I don't think that either side will win their case, but I think that that will be a win for Johnny Depp and a loss for Amber Heard, because people are not liking her right now. People are really liking him. That's where I'm seeing it right now. I wanted to get this out today because the trial starts back up tomorrow. They had a week break. I wanted to get everyone caught up. If you haven't watched it so far, those are kind of the highlights. You're ready to get back into it, get back into Amber Heard's testimony. I definitely advise watching it, just because it's been so culturally impacting. And of course, there are other things going on in the world right now. Still, there's a war going on in Ukraine. Still, there are bills being passed in Congress to send Ukraine a ridiculous amount of money. We're still dealing with increased gas prices. We're still dealing with increased grocery prices. We're still looking at massive inflation. We're still spiraling around the inevitability of a severe market crash. So yeah, we're looking at a recession. So there are a lot of serious things going on in the world right now, a lot of serious things going on in the country right now. So this case, I think, is a nice thing to kind of separate yourself from all the negativity and focus on something that's interesting, and also get a glimpse at the way that our legal system works, which is a very fascinating system. Even though flawed, it is a very good system, and it helps facilitate a fair trial, even if there are problems with it. And I highly recommend watching lawyers like on YouTube here or on Rumble, people like Ricardo Law, people like Nate the Lawyer, people like Legal Bites. They're all very good at breaking down the way that the court system works for you. They really go out of their way, particularly Nate the Lawyer. He goes out of his way to try to explain the way the system works and the verbiage that's used in our cases. I think it gives you a really good insight into the way that our country works, because almost everything dealing with politics and everything like that has to go through legal channels. So if you can get an idea or a glimpse at the way our legal system works, it gives you a really good idea of how our politics works, if you're into that kind of thing. And in this case, this is tying it all together, because this case is generating a lot of memes from our culture. So it's impacting our culture. It's also involving two actors, one of which who is a Hollywood legend, one of whom was kind of on the rise. So it's kind of been a track that has led all of the things that I'm interested in into one space. Dealing with stories being told by people, dealing with movie actors, dealing with the criminal system, or in this case, it's not the criminal system, but the legal system, and just bringing it all together. And also other YouTube channels that I very and Rumble channels that I really, really like. So it's a marriage of all of those things together. All right, so you're caught up. Once again, if you get a chance to watch the trial, it's starting back up tomorrow. Should be done in the next 2.5 to 3 weeks. And yeah, thank you so much for watching today. It's been it's been another fun one. So Cheers to y'all. It's been fun. And we'll see y'all next time.